You're listening to the British Baseball Podcast. We are back and we are live. Well, we are live now. Me and Jonathon are, but the rest of you're live in your own houses or in your car on your way to work, listening, watching along. Welcome back to the British Baseball Podcast. It's been a minute. We've had some time to reflect, some time to try and grow, try and ask some better questions. I can't promise those will happen. First off, before we get on with this one, some apologies to make. Towards the end of the series last year in 2023, it's a bit of a difficult time for myself. I ended up cancelling quite a few interviews. One or two things didn't quite make it to fruition. And for my own mental health and physical health that I was suffering with, decided to start the podcast at the end of whenever I ended it after the Drew Spencer episode. I thought it was a really good way to end on a high. I've had some time to collect my thoughts, get myself back together, recover mentally and physically. And we're back. We're back with a bang. A little bit later than expected. I was hoping to get these out by the start of the end of the baseball season here in Britain, but we can't always get the stars to align. But now we do have a star aligned. Jonathon, welcome back to the show.
Cheers, mate. I feel like star is a bit strong, but I appreciate it. And glad to hear you're back, mate. It's like I said to you before, you're very important for the game in this country. So glad you're back on the horse, fella.
Thank you very much. That means a lot to me, even though I do think I paid you well to say that. It's nice to see you're decked out in your GB gear. You had an incredible 2023. For those that may have not been following along, do you want to give us a recap, some of the ups and downs? Anything you'd like to share, some stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try my best. I think even with my very good memory, I'll probably miss some stuff just because 2023 was such a crazy year. It felt a bit like a movie at times. We obviously had the World Baseball Classic in March last year, which was uh, a tough experience to put into words, just how incredible and special it is. I think me and Drew talked quite a few times that it probably took 6 months after the tournament to arrange our thoughts and actually be able to verbalize what the WBC was like. And I've said to a few people about it recently, it was everything we sort of dreamed it was going to be, and 10 amazing things that we didn't even know could happen. So yeah, we had the WBC and we had a very successful tournament. We played a great game against Team USA, and then we had a really tough loss against Canada and bounced back the next day and beat Colombia. Um, and then played this amazing game of baseball against Mexico to end our tournament. So that was sort of the beginning of my year, which was obviously just an incredible life-changing experience. And then we had my first summer ever where I wasn't involved in the NBL as an adult. Um, so I got to do a little bit more scouting for GB and some other things within the game. And then August rolled around. We had the under-23 European Championships in Vienna. Um, we took a really strong team out there and managed to make the final against the Dutch team, and had a real tough night that night and lost a blowout, but ultimately qualified for a World Cup. And just another incredible experience. If I consider that Drew's first tournament with the 23s, first time me and him did the 23s together in 2019, we were 2 outs away from getting relegated against Croatia. To be back 4 years later in the final was incredible. And then we went on to the seniors in the Czech Republic a month later and managed to match that result, make another final, knock off some incredible teams along the way. We beat Italy for the first time ever. Lost another final, but again made more history and helped move the program along in ways off the field as well as on the field. and then I got married 2 weeks after the Euros. Um, so yeah, it was a crazy year. There was a trip to Nicaragua in there to do some scouting as well.
I
A
remember
couple of
that quite well.
yeah, well, when you're balling on a budget like GB baseball is, you got to take 7 flights to get to Nicaragua from London. But
Didn't you
you know
try
what?
to
It was
join one of the conversations? Was it the Drew chat that I was having, and you tried to dial in from the stadium?
I was in the stadium in Managua trying to dial in. That's how bought in I am to British baseball. And my new wife, did a very good job. She kind of pulled a fast one on me because she wanted a summer wedding. And I explained, I want to work in baseball, babe, and I don't want our anniversary, me to be on the road for the next 50 years. So she said, okay, well, how long after the season do you need for the wedding? I said, at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks after the season, we can get married. The final of the European Championships last year was October the 1st, and we got married on October the 14th. So she stuck to it by the hour. So that was my 2023, mate. Very kind of crazy, very busy. Still doesn't feel real, most of it, to be honest with you.
And a black wedding ring as well.
Yeah, that's what I've got. I've got the good one. I think mine was a cheap one from China though.
Yeah, mine's scuffed now. We went for platinum black ones, and they just seemed to surprised at how quick they sort of deteriorated. But I thought it was being different getting them now. Everyone's got black ones. I
Yeah,
think
I've
I just copied
noticed
everyone
actually a
else.
lot of a lot of baseball coaches have this sort of this. It was new to me. I don't wear jewelry. I've never worn jewelry. So it's actually a really weird feeling getting used to having something on my finger. And yeah, I put it away when I coach because Beth, my wife, puts up with a lot, and I think the straw that breaks the camel's back is if I said I've lost my ring at a baseball field. I think that would be the one to tip her over the edge. So
Yeah, I saw that happen on a field with a guy that I was playing with, and I've never seen a fella look so panicked. Um,
I'd probably change identities and fly to another country and start again.
like Nicaragua. Is that what you're
she
doing? Scout for houses in case you lose your ring.
Yeah, honestly, I'd be in some remote beach in Chile under a pseudonym, a new identity, because she puts up with a lot, and I think yeah, that'd be the like I said, that'd be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah. You mentioned before earlier that last season was your first season away from domestic baseball. How how did that come to be? Was it a case of you were more dedicated towards GB program, or did you need to spend a bit of time away from the game?
Um, I think it's interesting because I haven't really spoken on it publicly, right, about why I chose to leave the London Mets, and I think as anybody who is involved in the game knows, I've been a member of the London Mets since 1999. Um, I've got big history there. I had gotten to a point with the baseball club where I just think our values no longer aligned. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I think the things that we valued had changed. I think the club had evolved into something different from what it was. And the thing that it's evolved into serves a massive purpose for British baseball. But I felt like the elite side of things was getting left behind, unfortunately. And I still feel like clubs like the Mets have a big responsibility. They're the standard bearer, they're the club who have the most members and they have two fields and all of these things. So I just got to a point where I could no longer see the vision, and the type of personality that I am. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to dedicate myself to it. And it wasn't a mission that I could dedicate myself to anymore. So I took that decision to move away. It did happen to coincide with qualifying for the World Baseball Classic, and then my life being consumed with spreadsheets. But it was an interesting summer because I was very wary of it. My whole life has been built around summers at Finsbury Park.
Yeah.
It's since I was 8 years old. I've been to Finsbury Park 5 times a week every summer. And I will say that I was kind of surprised, but it was quite liberating at times, to be honest with you. not having to be the guy that moans about standards all the time. You know, I know there are some people who think that I get off on arguing, but it's tiring, man. It's really tiring being the dude who's always complaining. So that's why I made that decision, and I really worried that I'd made a wrong decision. And now, being 18 months down the line, I know that I've made the best decision for my mental health, and also I think for the good of the club and the harmony of the club.
Yeah, it's it's interesting that you're able to recognize and do something about, especially if it's been impacting your mental health as well. I mean, there's a loads of focus being put on mental health nowadays, and you can't value it enough, I don't think.
Yeah, baseball's my therapy. It's my sanctuary. I'd found myself waking up on a Sunday morning and sighing, oh, I gotta go to baseball today. We gotta go play in Croydon, and that I should never feel that way. That's it's not a good place to be. So a very difficult decision to make, especially with my history and stuff. But like I said, I think it was certainly best for me, and I would say that it was also best for the baseball club.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, indeed. You've been wearing a lot of hats as well for, well, not that one, especially on your head, for the GB program. I mean, you've been scout and, oh crikey, I can't even count
Bench
them on one
coach,
hand.
hitting
Yeah.
coach, manager, scout. I mean, yeah, security. I've done it all, to be honest with you.
How do you think then that all those different aspects of what you've done have helped you prepare for getting into the under 23 management?
I think obviously, um, confidence comes from preparation, right? Like knowing that helps you know. And I know that I've done the preparation, and I've been given a very fortunate seat next to Drew Spencer since 2019. And I know how fortunate I've been to be there, and I know that I've been a part of the process. Ultimately, though, I don't think anything prepares you for managing a national team. I don't think it's possible. Um, I managed the U15s for a year, but we didn't play in an official competition that year. We played in a an invitational tournament. So I've never managed Great Britain in a competitive game of baseball. Um, so I don't think anything can prepare you for that moment. Um, what I do know is that if you surround yourself with really, really good people who care just as much as you and who are willing to work as hard as you are, if not harder, you're probably going to be okay. Um, and I've certainly taken some leafs out of Drew's book on that. Um, but I know for a fact that for our first game in China, when the home plate umpire shouts managers and I have to walk out there with my lineup card, I'm going to be the most nervous person in the stadium. I already know that. And I'm probably going to make mistakes, right? It's only natural. Um, but I think we've seen that the philosophy and process we have around performance with the program works. We know it does.
Yeah.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating, and we've done some incredible things. So I'm going to stick to those core tenets, right? The selfless, relentless, the things that make us who we are. I'm going to stick to those core tenets. I'm going to trust the experts who I've brought in to be experts, and I'll let baseball decide the results. You can't control it too much. Um, the 2 years I managed for the London Mets, the two most helpless years I've had in my baseball career. Because as a manager, you can almost affect the least, right? You're not the hitting coach, you're not the pitching coach, you're not working on the mechanics, you're not the scout, you're not building the game plan. So I'm just gonna let it ride. I'm gonna let, like I said, I'm gonna let the experts be experts. I'm gonna write a lineup, and I think we'll win some games, but who knows? Maybe we won't.
I tell you what, though, there's going to be a lot of excited people. I mean, if anything that 2023 taught me about British baseball was how it seemed like there was more people getting behind the team from
I
the
mean,
social media and
people like
everything.
winners, right?
Hmm.
It's not the nicest fact because I played on some GB teams that worked really hard, that were full of nice guys who were great ambassadors for the program. But we came ninth, and unfortunately, that doesn't inspire people the same way that getting to a final or getting to a semi-final does. And baseball, and like all sport, elite sport, it's a results-based business. Um, and we spend so much of our time as coaches focusing on the process with the players, but ultimately the results matter. And you know, you win games, you inspire people, and they support you more, and they tell a friend, and you win more games. So it was definitely nice. But ultimately, I think the responsibility for making that happen laid with us. You know, it was up to us to make people feel like they had to tune in.
Yeah, yeah, and they did. And it's not too long now until is it September, China,
Yep.
near my
September the 5th.
birthday. Just saying. Uh, it's going to be it. Well, we're recording this now, and it's almost May, and I can't believe how quick this year's gone already. So yeah, it's going to be September soon. So, like, are you able to tell us about who you've got on your staff and what qualities they're going to bring to the team and the table?
Yeah. So we've gone undergone a small transformation, not a large transformation, but a small transformation with the staff. I think last year we had a really large coaching staff. Um, and that's something that you can do when a tournament's in Austria, right? Because logistically, you know, flights to Austria are cheaper than flights to China, for example. So we've had to pare the coaching staff back a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. Um, and then there's obviously a knock-on effect. Drew gets hired by the New York Yankees. I get promoted to manager. Well, I was the bench coach last year, so the first thing I needed to do in terms of the staff was replace myself, in essence.
Yeah,
So my solution to that was I've promoted Connor Brooks, who is our pitching coach, to bench coach. Because I mean, the guy is honestly one of the you if you think of the word expert when it comes to analyzing the game of baseball, Connor Brooks is the epitome of it. He's one of the most hardworking, diligent, intelligent people I've ever met in any walk of life, let alone baseball. So decided that I wanted to have him standing next to me, sort of, you know, calming me down, probably. But then there's a knock on effect there, right? Because now we have to replace Connor as the pitching coach. So I've decided to hire Vance Worley to be our pitching coach.
yeah,
Vance pitched for us at the World Baseball Classic against Team USA and
yeah,
was a major league veteran of I think 11 years, and just brings an incredible wealth of knowledge. Um, you know, he pitched on playoff teams. He was a rookie of the year contender in 2009. But also has the unique perspective that he pitched for Great Britain in international competition last year. And so he's really going to be able to impart to our pitchers some wisdom about pitching in general, but also he's going to be able to impart to them what you need to do to be successful in a Great Britain uniform on the international stage.
yeah.
Really, really excited about that appointment. Um, our hitting coach from last year was a gentleman named Jeremy Sheets, who is truly one of the most talented baseball coaches to walk this planet.
And a
Um,
fantastic podcast as well, Dugout
and
Chatter.
just an incredible human being as well. Really felt honored that I got to coach with him for a week, and he's one of those people that you want to get better just being around him. He's just an inspiring human being. That being said, unfortunately, because of when the tournament falls, he's unable to attend because he's a
No.
head coach of Georgia Gwinnett College, and that time is really important for incoming freshmen. So we've hired a coach who called Todd Steverson, who worked in the big leagues for the White Sox and the Oakland Athletics as a hitting coach. He's been a minor league hitting coach for 20 years. Um, and again, is just a treasure trove of the wealth and depth of knowledge that he brings is really, really incredible. And I think it speaks to two things. It speaks to the visibility of the program rising, and the pull of the program rising, that we were able to bring in a guy like as he likes to be called, his nickname's Trick, to bring in a guy like Trick, um, when he has no background with the country. It's not like he has a great grandfather or something from Britain. So super excited to have him on board. He's just incredible. And then to assist him and coach third base, we've hired Bianca Smith, who coached for the Boston Red Sox, and she's a Dartmouth alum, and she's now working coaching in Japan. Um, and again, just the depth of knowledge is off the charts. She's one of the most intelligent people I've met, and also very excited about sort of continuing the tradition that we've had with Drew and myself of our coaching staffs being super diverse from multiple backgrounds.
Yeah, indeed.
My old mum used to give me a lot of flack that we never had any women on staff and that we never got a female perspective on anything. And she was right. And I'm so glad that the game has progressed to a point where someone like Bianca is out there, who she has this incredible experience, and she's also going to bring a really interesting point of view to things. And I really look forward to her challenging my worldview on some things. And then we've got some returning coaches. Scott Bourgeois will be returning, the U15's head coach. He will be our first base coach. Just incredible bloke. And anyone that's been around Scott knows what he brings. And Chris Bassett will be returning as our bullpen coach, who he's a former national team player and runs a facility now called Prime Time. Just a great coach. So that's the
Yeah,
staff I've put together. Really, really excited. And like I said, when I said I'm going to let the experts be experts, they really are experts. So yeah, super excited. I think it's why I'm not panicking or jumping out the window yet, because I look at the depth of knowledge I have around me and I think, well, I can't make too many mistakes, you know?
yeah. So how challenging has it been then with all these different people in all the different time zones to try and get things coordinated? Because I've tried to interview people that are just in like the east side of America and I can't get that right. But no, you've got people central on
Yeah,
different coasts in Japan.
it's between the players and the coaches, we operate across 8 time zones. I actually worked that out recently. Um, it means that group meetings are difficult. Um, it just means I've got to put the legwork in, right? It means that sometimes I got to stay up late to talk to Bianca, or sometimes I got to get up early to talk to Bianca, and sometimes I got to stay up late to talk to Vance. And I think ultimately in the industry, right, in international baseball, time zones are kind of optional. Um, you work 20-hour days. So the 4 hours of sleep, it doesn't really matter when they fall. It is going to be slightly different because I think Drew was such a collaborative manager. I've never met anyone who is so collaborative in the process as Drew is. Um, and I think it's important, you know, I've certainly learned a ton from Drew and I've stolen so much from him, but I'm also different to Drew and I need to embrace the fact that there are differences. And it means that some of the things that I probably wouldn't be capable of doing that Drew does, like being so incredibly collaborative, um, they matter less because we can't get together so much. So that's the solution. Lots of individual phone calls, lots of updates in Slack. I think in the modern world, you can be in constant communication without getting your heads together on the same Zoom screen for 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I can imagine. I've just had when you said that, I was just like, crikey, that is going to be like a 5 o'clock in the morning job. Or someone's getting upset at a WhatsApp message pinging off. But
Yeah, and
regardless,
it's like I was saying about my poor wife Beth. You know, sometimes it's, hey babe, I can't come to bed until 3 a.m. because I got to talk to a player whose game finishes at this time, and that's just how it is. You know,
yeah.
it's not all lovely hotels and sold out stadiums in Phoenix. The overwhelming majority of being a GB baseball coach is being really tired and really frustrated.
It'd be interesting to see. I know a lot of people have been curious about the roster construction as well. Is it going to look a bit different to the previous under 23 rosters, especially like the one that was part in the Euros? Can we expect to see a lot of familiar faces returning?
Yeah, I think one of the things I will steal from Drew is playing my cards close to my chest when it comes to our roster. Um, I think you will always naturally have turnover just due to guys aging out, right? And we
Hmm.
had some guys age out, like Matteo Celestito and guys like that have aged out, and they're team leaders, so that's something that we need to bear in mind. Um, we'll certainly have some returnees. Um, I think if you looked at our team in the final of the senior Euros, we had six players under the age of 23 on the field.
Yeah,
So that's obviously a great base to work off. The Jake Lamdins and the Mike Flaherty's and the Ben Leeds and Rayondre Mercers, and obviously those guys are in with a great chance of returning. But for a tournament like this, your chances of getting professional players is higher. It's not nailed on; it never is.
no,
But that's something we have to take into account. There were players that missed out on last year's roster due to injury or unavailability, and that is something that has to be taken into account. Um, and as the visibility of the program rises, the player pool grows, and the amount of players that we have contacting us that are passport holders grows, and it means that we've had some kids over the last 8 to 10 months reach out to us playing a very high Division 1 level that are eligible that we didn't know existed, or at least we didn't know that they had the passport. Um, so there'll definitely be some familiar faces, and I certainly don't believe that you pick a roster by picking the most 24 talented players. There is a dynamic to a roster. It's a
yeah,
living, breathing thing. And I certainly think guys that have some history with the program have a leg up in the selection process because they understand where we've come from, and that's going to help form our culture. Um, but everything's up in the air, and I talk to the players a lot, and we kind of have an open door policy when it comes to the depth chart. If a player asks me where they're at, I'm honest with them. And for the guys who know that they're number one in the depth chart right now, they've all been told the same thing. Hey, man, you're number one, but things can change fast. If, if Drew is at Yankees camp and some kid in AA has a British passport, they play your position, it's going to change.
yeah,
Um, so I would say we'll have a decent amount of returners, but we'll have some new faces and hopefully, touch wood, a couple of surprise names as well.
yeah. I'm gutted Mateo's not eligible, and he's been such a solid player for years. Like I've been doing this now, so it's crikey, 5 years. I know
Yeah.
it's not a long time in baseball terms, but he just seems to have always been in every single thing that's been happening with GB baseball. Just Mateo's been around it, and finally getting to a World Cup and he can't be a part of it. And it's not for like an injury, if it's just because his birthday's a
Yeah.
bit
I
too
know.
old. Oh,
I mean,
heartbreaking.
Mateo's a perfect example of he has an it factor, right? And it manifests itself in a way that is not common in European baseball, a way of playing and a way of conducting yourself, right? Mateo has huge bravado, huge bravado. He's one of those dudes that if you played against him, you hated him. And if you played with him, you loved him. You'd run through a wall for him.
Yeah,
And one of the things that used to frustrate me about the program was I felt like we were too restrictive on how players had to act. Uh, I certainly felt as a player like I had to sort of play this Captain England character that, didn't swear and didn't spit and didn't. And for some people, that just isn't true. One of the things that Drew's taught me is you have to let these dudes be themselves. And I think that's what we've seen with Mateo is we've given him free license to be himself. And he's gone over the line a few times, but that's going to happen when you allow it.
yeah,
Um, but when I think about the energy and the bravado and the aggression and the front footedness that Mateo brings to a team, that's something we absolutely have to replace in the selection process. And it's hard. It's hard to find human beings who, it's easy to be talkative, to talk trash, and to be loud when you're winning. It's really easy. Everybody can do that.
yeah,
Um, Last year in the final of the U23s, we're getting beat 24-3 by the Dutch, and 2,000 people are chanting overrated. And Mateo was still on the front step of the dugout, chest out, nose in the air, letting it fly. Um, and those guys are they're gold dust, man. It's it's so hard to find an elite competitor, not an elite baseball player, but an elite competitor. Um, but I have no doubt Mateo will get his flowers. He'll get what he deserves out of this game because he's put so much into it. He's one of the
Yeah,
good guys.
yeah. So speaking of like character, what apart from the passport and the ability levels, what are you looking for in your players? What sort of characteristics and personalities?
Toughness, um, maturity, uh, emotional intelligence. Um, but really, and I hate to say it because I feel like it makes me sound like a meathead, but it's just toughness. It's just at this level, everybody is good. At this level, everybody does the scouting. At this, we all have the same information. If we go to China and try and out talent teams, we're not going to win many games, if any. Um, we're going to have to get punched in the mouth and keep moving forward. And so for me, toughness and also just because of who I am and how I view myself and how I view myself as a coach and a human being, that's the one deal breaker for me is if guys are mentally weak and they have some quit in them, I just can't abide by it. Everything else, we can coach it, we can work on it. Um, but that's the deal breaker for me. And then, like I said, the other things like emotional intelligence and just being able to be a good teammate and be coachable. And, we're one of the things that you have to think about when you go away with the national team, and we say this to the guys, is you're only wearing a uniform for 3 hours a day, but you're representing GB for 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
Everything, when you go to breakfast in the hotel, you're representing GB. Um, it's always important to do things right, but it's doubly important to do things right. Here, we're going to the World Cup, and it's being held in an Olympic training facility with 11 other incredible nations. Um, so we can't have any tomfoolery. We can't have any. It's just kids being kids. So that's why I'd say toughness, maturity, and emotional intelligence. Those are the three things I need from guys.
yeah. Which of the teams are looking forward to facing when you get to
We
China?
we got Japan in our group, um, and I've been smiling. I don't know if you remember, but I actually spoke about watching Japan play once on this podcast, um, and I said that their
Mm,
infield outfield was like a work of art. It ceased to be baseball. So to have the opportunity to coach against the best baseball nation in the world, and that's empirical, right? They're number one in the world rankings, and they won the World Baseball Classic. They're the best. I I'm excited on a personal level, but more than that, I'm excited for the 24 kids that get to put Great Britain across their chest and go play the best in the world.
yeah, it's going to
We
bring a
also have,
lot out of the players. It's going to be a proper benchmark set, isn't it?
yeah, man, and look, it's for me. If you play against Japan in China in a World Cup, then a European Championship in 12 months, a semi-final or a final isn't the pressure that it was before,
No,
you know. Um, and I think some of the kids on the team would tell you that the lights and the people of the final last year was a bit overwhelming for them. I think that shows up in the way we played. So, even if Japan kick our butts, we're going to get better. Um, and I hope that we've got a lovely game plan for them that means they don't kick our butts.
mm,
And then we have Australia in our group, which my wife is Australian. My mom was born in Australia. Some of my favorite teammates of all time have been Australian. So really looking forward to that one. Know that's going to be a good time, and there's a good chance they have the number one overall draft pick playing for them in Travis Bazana, who anyone who follows college baseball knows that he's doing some incredible things right now. Um, but yeah, if you give me enough time, I'm going to sit here and list all 11 teams because I want to play everyone, right? I can't wait to play the other five teams in our group and the other six in the other group. I can't wait to play those guys in the knockout rounds.
yeah,
But if I had to hang my hat, I can't wait to play Japan. I think about it every day.
Yeah. When I saw the pool is one that I probably would have circled as well as like going to be the game that I want to watch. I mean, I know the time's going to be really difficult, and I'm going to try my best to try and watch as many as possible, as I know a lot of people will be. But I think if I could pick one, I think it would be against Japan.
And like, what a privilege, man, to get to coach against Team USA and Team Japan in the space of 18 months. Honestly, like you have to be thankful for that. And
Hmm.
I think it's why I've got quite a laissez-faire attitude about results because man, it's a blessing, you know. This I coach in Britain. I don't so a lot of my GB baseball colleagues they work for other teams. Antoine's in the big leagues with the Mets and Mars is in Visalia and Connor works for a Korean. These guys have other things going on. For me, I only ever put baseball pants on for GB baseball. So to get to only do GB baseball and then coach against two programs of that caliber in 18 months is it's mind blowing, man. I'm just so thankful.
Yeah, we're talking about the 24. One of the listener questions that came through was from Spencer Long. Spencer, thank you for submitting this one. He asked, "What's being done to ensure that more British trained players can make their way into the under-23 setup? Is the reliance on American imports actually sustainable in the long run?"
I think it's a good question. I think first of all, the clarity on the answer comes with knowing the full picture.
Hmm.
Um, the team that we took, for example, to the senior European Championships last year is very easy to meet all 24 of those guys and think that all 24 of them are quote unquote imports. And I hate that phrase because I'm
Yeah,
not more British than Harry Ford. And it doesn't, but anyway. Um, so it's interesting because if you look at that team, Freddie Moja, born and raised in the not born in the United Kingdom, but raised in the United Kingdom, came through the London Mets youth system, went to school in Brockwell Park, South London. Matteo Celestito, as we mentioned, raised in North London, went to school in Holloway, which for anyone that knows North London is 20 minutes from the Mets field. Michael Flaherty, raised in London, went to the American school in London, did all of his baseball at Finsbury Park. Chris Messer, not raised in London, but moved to London when he was 20, and will tell you that the coaching he received in England is the reason he was able to go out and do what he did. If you look at the Germany semi-final of the senior Euros, after Alex Webb, we only had domestic guys, quote unquote, pitching relief. Matteo Celestito, London Met, went to Chris Messer, London Met, and Freddie Moja, London Met, closed it out. So for me, that's the first important distinction on this answer is there are currently domestic kids playing in the senior national team. Matteo Celestito was on the World Baseball Classic qualifier roster. It's possible. And the idea that it's not possible is built out of not knowing who these guys are. And that might be a fault of the national team. Maybe we should market ourselves better. I don't know. So that's the first thing. It's possible. It's not impossible. Um, in terms of the sustainability, do I believe it's sustainable? Yes. Do I believe it should remain the status quo? No, absolutely not. I think as much as everyone, would love to have 24 kids go into China who were all born and raised in Great Britain, who got my in-betweeners references and my British pop culture references. I would love that. That would be incredible. Um, Unfortunately, with the current dynamic, with the current talent outlook out there, if we take a quote unquote again domestic team to the European Championships last year, we get relegated.
yeah,
And unfortunately, I don't want to say that, but I know I'm right. It's my job to evaluate talent. Um, and it's an interesting one because ultimately 99% of national teams don't develop players, right? Like my counterparts in other countries don't develop players. They select the best players that have been developed by the clubs or the academies. And then they work on the little things, bunt defenses and double cuts. Um, that doesn't happen here. We don't have development academies. We don't have, the French have 4 full-time academies where the kids live in-house. The Dutch have 9 clubs with full-time academies. Germany has 3 full-time academies and a major league spec facility in Regensburg. The Czechs have 3 academies. It's very easy to stare across the channel and see what our competitors are doing and say, well, why can't we do that? Well, we can't do that because we don't have what they have. Um, and the strategy the last few years has been to win as much as possible, regardless of where people wake up in the morning, to raise more funds from the government and people like that so that it can be reinvested back into British baseball. And I think a great example is that the British Baseball Federation's Facilities Fund, which clubs can apply for, and there's a really good grant available so that they can up the standard of their facility. That money has come out of World Baseball Classic prize money.
Yeah.
So that's the knock-on effect.
Yeah.
So that's my answer, is it's not impossible. Anyone can do it. But the reality right now is that we are forced to pick people regardless of their accent.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not an expert or nothing, as everyone well knows, but it's for me, I've seen more people attending. It's just growing the pool, really. It feels like an infancy sort of thing again, where the national team does better, more people tune and watch, more people become more interested, more people playing, then your selection pool becomes bigger. But also, you need a national team to be winning, like you said. Yeah, that prize money helps develop the grassroots facilities to try and get more people. It ain't gonna happen overnight, but it can happen, like you said. We've seen it in other countries. I mean, when I spoke to Pavel in the Czech to try and find out like what the Czech blueprint was, it was such a fascinating conversation. I mean, I knew he was never going to tell me like everything, but you could see that this thing didn't just sort of just spring up out of the ground. They were playing on a field that was a actual dump that they just converted and built into the facilities, and they've been able to build and reinvest and build and reinvest. And there's always going to be other competing sports over here as there are in other countries, and it's just getting the kids the opportunities to get a glove in their hand and a ball and getting them having fun and playing the sport.
I mean, look, I think the year was 1996. Gavin Marshall will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm reasonably sure in 1996 we beat the Czech Republic in the B pool qualifier final. We went to the A pool and they stayed down. And on that day, Czech baseball made a commitment to development. And for people like Pavel Chadim or the great David Winkler, who sadly just recently
Yeah,
passed
man.
away, or Alex Derhack, or any of those other incredible Czech coaches that are out there, those people dedicated their lives to the game of baseball on that day. So, for anyone in this country who's frustrated at the outlook of development, my question would be, are you at the field 6 times a week? And if you're not at the baseball 6 times a week, then you're not contributing to the solution of development. It's really that simple. And I was certainly someone in the past who could have been accused of sitting on the sidelines and complaining about what everybody else did. I mean, I was. And it took my frustration reaching a point where I said, I'm just going to get involved and do it to now I'm contributing and helping things get better. So I guess for anyone that feels that way, I would say, awesome, sign up for the ABCA, learn to be a great coach, start a baseball club and run practices 6 times a week and help us, give us some players who are at a level where they can compete, because I think the other thing is some people don't know how good our opposition is.
Mm.
I truly believe that the people don't realize the Dutch have 50 kids that throw 90 plus, and they just select whichever 11 are available for the tournament. I got to hang out with the Dutch coaches in Dallas at the ABCA. And they said and this might just be posturing, but I believe them because some of it's quite easy to find out. They said that the roster they sent to the 23s was like a C crew. It wasn't even The Durangelo Clintes, who's their best pitcher, who's at Mississippi State, they didn't even ask him. And that's because they have all those professional clubs. They have a great professional league. They have academies. They have all of these things. I not casting aspersions, but I went and watched NBL opening day this year in Enfield, the Mets and the Bruins. And I've got friends on both teams and both coaching staffs, no aspersions, but that ain't preparing you to play Team Japan. And to be honest with you, I think I'd be doing a kid a disservice if I took him from the NBL and threw him into a World Cup. My job is to put the players in a position to succeed. And you can't go from the NBL to facing Japan have a lefty that throws 97. It's just not possible. So that's my answer. It's sustainable, but it shouldn't become the status quo. But the solution isn't to just force guys into a role because of their accent that they're not ready for. The solution is for all of us in the entire community to make a massive commitment towards driving the standards up and to driving the frequency that we play baseball up. And you know what? If we're 10 years down the line and there's multiple teams practicing 5-6 times a week and we've got a semi-professional league and the national team still aren't picking domestic players, then yeah, that's then absolutely. But it's just not the reality right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Good answer, man. Good answer.
Well, you know what? It's a conversation I have a lot with people and I understand why some people feel the way they feel. I do. I see the world differently on purely on a personal level. Speaking about Jonathon, I don't believe, like I said to you, I don't believe there are degrees of British,
Yeah.
right? In my mind, you either are or you aren't, and your accent or where you wake up has no bearing on it. To me, it doesn't matter, right? But I can understand that some people do care, and I can understand that some people feel that the development opportunities of tournaments are really important for British kids.
Yeah.
My contention to it is that tournaments are the only time you don't develop. It's the only time of the year where the only thing that matters is winning. And speaking of my own personal experience as a player, there were tournaments I went to that were counterproductive to my development because they made me feel so far behind. I felt so overmatched by the opposition that you get back to England and you think, am I making a mistake committing my life to this? Because that German kid was so much better than me, So yeah. Sorry, I could rant about this for hours.
No,
Don't
it's
let me.
fine. It's like I say, it's good discussion topic because when I've spoken to a lot of people within the community, ex-players, ex-managers, people that sit there on the sidelines, and everyone has their own view and opinion. And then everyone wants to see GB baseball do well and thrive. But then you've got people that would say that they just want it to be we're bad, but we're just playing domestic homegrown talent, and it is what it is. And then there's people that are just like you pick the best available players, you get GB baseball on the map, and then we hope for the best. And like I said, and it'd be great to have the balance between the two, but it's going to take a
Well, I mean,
village
here's the
to.
other thing. It's like opportunity dictates a lot of this, right? There is no team in Europe that is purely domestic based. It doesn't exist, right? Everyone, the Czechs are a great example. The Czechs have done a wonderful job. But the moment Eric Sogard was eligible, they brought him in. He played second base. The moment Jake Rabinovitz got his Czech passport, he was in. He was pitching. The moment Jeffrey Bartow got his Czech passport, he was in. He was pitching. And I have no doubt if there was a massive Czech community in Georgia producing players, they would use more.
Mm,
It's easy, the Dutch. The Dutch have the luxury of Aruba and Curacao and St. Martin. I only found this out recently, but if you're born in Aruba, Curacao, or St. Martin, you're given a Dutch passport automatically. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that the Dutch also produce some incredible homegrown players, but they have guys that didn't grow up in Holland, that weren't born and raised in Holland, that play for
mm.
Holland. The Italians have an incredible amount of Venezuelan guys that play for them. The Germans bring in guys. The French had Ariel Sorry. it's not like there is any nation out there that are doing this altruistic. It's all about the development, man. It's just
Yeah,
that unfortunately, with a nation like Great Britain that colonized half of the bleeding world, it means that there are potential citizens all over the place, you know?
yeah,
So I truly believe, I can't cast any, I don't know this to be a fact, but I truly believe that if some of these other national teams had the reach that we have, they would select just as many guys as we
yeah.
do.
Sorry,
It's
so
just not.
then in the championships, the Czech team did it, and what's it doesn't sort of get my goat anymore though. But you always see people in the chats when it's streamed on YouTube, like with the USA chants and stuff, and it's very easy for people that don't have the inside information to just perceive
Well, and
what they want
who are
to
any
read
of
from it.
us to be the arbiters of nationality, right? Like, like I said, if anyone who feels this way, if you ever meet Harry Ford, go and tell him that he's less British, and good luck, because that kid bleeds red, white, and blue, and when the anthem plays, he cries, and it's so. And I mean, the commitment that he made to us last year was absolutely incredible. The kid went from
Yeah,
finishing his minor league season to the next day flying to the European Championships, being a team leader and catching 6 out of our 7 games, hitting two every day. We played the final, and at 4 a.m. the next day, he caught a flight to Arizona to play in the Arizona Fall League. That's a remarkable level of commitment for a 20-year-old. And he does
British
it,
baseball.
and he does it because he cares so deeply about representing his father and representing his heritage.
Yeah,
And I just find the whole thing arbitrary. People don't know that Brad Marcelino lived in Enfield, North London till he was 12. So what level of British is he under this metric? Um, we
yeah,
talked about Matteo Solicito, who has no British blood, as it were, running through his veins. His family are Italian and Polish. So where does he fall on this scale? I just find the whole thing to be arbitrary and picking and choosing. You know, international sport is about elite, the best of the best, going up against the other country's best of the best. And if it ceases to be that, then it's no longer international sport. You know.
mm, yeah, yeah, indeed. Um, that really was a good question. And again, anyone that's listening that wants to leave their thoughts and stuff in the comments or posters about it, just forums. We've got the British Baseball Clubhouse chat, and let's talk about it.
Well, and I also think people should be aware that we have a responsibility under the Olympic Charter, right? We are now an Olympic sport for the next 5 years, and that therefore we fall underneath the Olympic Charter. And the Olympic Charter has a section on it involving athletes' human rights. And one of those is that selection cannot be based on race, creed, color, religion, anything like that. So, past however I feel about the situation on a personal level, if we selected players or didn't select players based on where they live, we'd be breaking the Olympic Charter. We would be, according to the IOC, that is denying the human rights of an athlete.
We don't want to be those people, do we?
So, I mean, and I've had this conversation with people within the program recently. Regardless of how I feel personally,
Mm,
the IOC charter is clear. So, I don't know. It's a frustrating one for me because it's a conversation that unfortunately I have way too often with way too many people. I think that we focus on it way too much.
yeah, indeed. Well, we do have two more listener questions. I do think we could talk about it a lot more, but it would be unfair to the anonymous person. You could probably guess it's from, and also the other person, Ian. So the anonymous one is: Are you supporting the Yankees to win the World Series now that Drew is part of the staff?
Hell yes, absolutely I am. No two ways about it. But I'm also supporting the New York Mets because Antoine works for them, and I support the Arizona Diamondbacks because Brad Marcelino works for them. Um, I support the Cubs because BJ Murray plays for them, and I support the Cardinals because Joseph King plays for them. Um, I've lost. I think I said this to you before we got on live. I've lost my
Yeah.
fandom. I used to be a Phillies fan. I've lost my fandom. Um, but in all seriousness, my respect for the New York Yankees organization went through the roof in 2019 when I saw the way they conducted themselves. Um, that organization really is the epitome of class. And my soft spot for them was growing from 2019. Um, and now that my best friend in baseball works for them, uh, I've certainly watched 10 or 11 Yankees games this year already. Uh, and what's crazy actually is a couple of weeks ago, Juan Soto threw someone out to win the game at home plate. And I know that Drew had been working with outfielders on their footwork for throws in spring training. So it was a really cool moment. Soto throws the guy out at home plate. The announcer says, "The Yankees win." And I text Drew, like, "Hey, I see you with the footwork. That a boy." Um, so, yeah, absolutely. I want the New York Yankees to win the World Series. And then Drew can fly me out to Florida with his bonus.
Indeed. When we first had a conversation way back when you said you're going to be Yankees manager.
Correct.
Um, how do you feel about having to shave that beard off?
Mate, that is an easy decision. That 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 takes 30 seconds. And it's a little bit of a segue, but I went clean shaven for my wedding day, completely clean shaven.
Hmm.
I sat in a barber's chair on the morning of my wedding, and the barber said, "What do you want me to do with it?" And I went to say, "Just clean it up." And I heard my mum's voice in the back of my head, "Have a shave. It's your bloody wedding day." So I went completely clean shaven for the wedding, and I showed up. The amount of people that introduced themselves to me. My father-in-law walked up to me and said, "Oh, hello, I'm Richard." I said, "Yeah, Richard's me. I've just shaved, mate, because I do look like a completely different person." But yeah,
Yeah,
that would be. You know what? I would shave before I even had an interview with them, just to, put it in their head that I'm their type of guy.
yeah. I can't go fully shaven. I did it for my mate's wedding when I was best man, and my wife said I look like a testicle. There you
That's
go. Harsh but
that's
true. And a top hat on and everything. I like a right
yeah.
cravat.
I've got a very baby face. I look very young when I shave, so I try to hide it behind all of this ZZ Top stuff that I normally have going on.
Beautiful, man. It's wild and tamed. I love it. Right, last one from Bleasy. I'm a few years older than you, Cram, but in many ways, I want to be like you when I grow up. To go on to achieve even half what you've managed so far as a baseball coach would see me retire as a very happy man. Although I'm sure you've loved the majority of your time involved with the game, I wonder if I can ask about the sacrifice that you may have made along the way. What kind of things have you put second to baseball in order to prioritize your development in the sport? And do you have any regrets at all? Told you it was
Wow,
good.
that's beautiful. First of all, Ian Blease is one of the good guys. Let me just say that he's one of the best people in this game, and I think I've always people know that when I love you, and when I hate you, and I've always had a lot of respect and admiration for the way Ian has conducted himself. So really nice to hear what he said. In terms of sacrifices, everything and nothing, right? Like I've got a couple of friends in the world, two or three. Um, my wife doesn't see me anywhere near as much as she should. She's currently hiding in our bedroom so that I can do this podcast. Um, I'm perpetually poor. I never have enough money. I'm perpetually behind on my rent and living off noodles. Um, but it's not really a sacrifice because it doesn't feel hard. It's just what you do, right? I want to do something that's never been done before, so I'm probably going to have to do some things that have never been done before. Um, so I think from the outside looking in, I've sacrificed friends and job opportunities and money and relationships and experiences and I never did the lads holiday or played on a five-a-side team or I've never had a hobby I don't have any hobbies. Like I just coach baseball, scout baseball. That's what I do. Um, but I wouldn't have it any other way, and I wouldn't change any of it. Um, I think about the sacrifices that my mum made to give me the opportunities to do what I wanted to do when I was a child. And it's the obvious sacrifices, the financial sacrifices, but it's also the other things. It's giving up your entire weekend. It's, my mum was a musician. She'd work till 5 a.m., sleep for an hour, and then we'd get up to go to a tournament. Um, my godfather, who sadly passed away last year, I think about how many checks he cut to send me on trips. And then I think about all the things that my auntie did to help my mum deal with it. And I think about what my darling wife goes through. Those are the sacrifices that burden me. Those are the real sacrifices, right? Um, I feel like at this point I'm so deep into this thing, and the people that I care about the most have given up so much just to give me an opportunity that I'd be willing to give everything up. I'll take the shirt off my back if it means I get to coach baseball tomorrow. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think I got lucky. I'd been dating Beth for 3 months. I was 23 years old at the time, just about to go to play for GB at the Senior Euros. And I said to her, "Hey, listen, baseball's always going to come first. I need you to know that. I wanted to do this with my life, and this relationship is beginning to form, and I want you to know that it's always going to come first. And if you want to get out now, then get out. I understand." And she didn't. She made a commitment to come second sometimes, which is a really hard thing to do, especially the longer you're with someone, the more you fall in love with someone, and you get married, you make that commitment. Um, but yeah, I haven't made any sacrifices. The people around me have made sacrifices. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. And Ian is a really he's a good fella, but it's also kind of serendipitous because I've been trying to talk to Ian about something for about a year and we haven't been able to get it together. So I'll just tell him on this podcast instead while he's watching or listening. Last year when we beat Colombia, we went to a bar afterwards and we saw Bax and Bleesy and some
Yeah,
other
yeah.
people. And Bleesy and Bax were interviewed by the Sporting News. And the Sporting News wrote an article. And in the article, uh, Bleesy references me. He's like, you see the grizzly bear looking dude over there, that's Cramman. And he sort of goes through who I was. But he made some points about my journey that you would only know if you knew me. You know what I mean? Like you would only know if you cared about me. You would only know if you knew me. And that article was a really special thing to read for me. I'm getting emotional thinking about it, and I'm not ashamed about that at all. He knew. It's interesting because me and him were working together on the hiring committee for GB Baseball for the U12s manager when my mum had a fall that eventually led to her passing away. So in that period of my life, I was actually in regular contact with Ian. Um, and he knew in 2023 when we beat Colombia and I was staring off into space, couldn't talk, he knew what I was thinking about. And he referenced it in a really succinct, beautiful, compassionate way in that article. So I've always wanted to thank him for that. So you've just given me the opening to do that. So cheers, Bleesy. You're a star fella.
There you go. And I'll be able to top that with any more questions. So I won't. Jonathan, it's a pleasure as always. We don't do this as much as we should do. Anything you want to add before we go? Any parting words or anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, you know what? I would like to say two things. One, I want people to understand the national team is an open book. Uh, I've certainly noticed people talking to me and treating me slightly differently since the press release came out that I was the manager. Nothing has changed, right? I'm the same dude and everything's the same. But apart from that, the people who don't know me, who've never met me, um, if you have a question about the national team or about development, contact me. I will get back to you. And I think anybody who's dealt with me can attest, I will get back to you. It's important to me. So if anyone listens to this podcast and they have further questions or they wish to tell me they think I'm full of rubbish or whatever it is, please reach out and please allow the national team to become more visible, right? Because we don't have a media and marketing department, and the coaches don't have time to do that stuff. So that will be my first thing. I'm an open book. Please, anyone, any questions? Um, and then my second thing would be, I think I'm really proud of what the national team's done for the whole community, right? Like it feels like there's this incredible groundswell of optimism around the game in this country at the moment. And I'm really proud because I feel like the national team have driven that with the WBC and the Euros and, all sorts of things. The request I would have of people listening would be if you have found yourself inspired, uh, take a leaf out of our book and start working super hard to make your baseball club better or your child better or yourself better. Uh, you don't have to commit every hour of your life like I do to make people better. So please, anyone who is inspired by it, join a club, start coaching, take a course, start scoring or scouting or whatever. Find a way to help because it needs every single one of us to raise the standards in this country for us to select that 24 domestic players that have an accent from Leicester and Newcastle and Cardiff. It's only going to happen if every single member of the community buys in.
Indeed. Well said. Jonathan, enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll
Cheers,
catch
mate.
you soon. Take care, mate.
Cheers. Ta-da.